LEGO has released thousands of sets over the decades, creating everything from magical castles to sprawling cityscapes, but not every brick that left their factory turned into gold, and today we're diving into the absolute worst and most disappointing LEGO sets that somehow made it to store shelves and left collectors questioning what the designers were thinking. Galador Nick Bluetooth. Let's start with what LEGO themselves called the worst-selling toy line in their entire history. The Galador theme launched in 2002, and it almost bankrupted the company. Nick Bluetooth, the main character from this disaster, is genuinely one of the most bizarre things LEGO ever produced. The figure had only 3 pieces to put together: a head, a torso, and legs. That's it. There was barely any building involved. The whole concept was based on a TV show called Galador, Defenders of the Outer Dimension, which was equally terrible and got cancelled after just 26 episodes. The show followed Nick, who could glinch, which meant he could swap body parts with other creatures. The toys tried to replicate this with pin connections at every joint, but the result looked absolutely horrific. Nick's proportions were completely off, his face looked unnatural, and the figure couldn't hold any decent pose. Reviewers described him as looking like he was melted in a microwave. One commenter said he looked more like a counterfeit toy than an actual LEGO product. The worst part is they released multiple versions of Nick, including a deluxe edition that somehow managed to be even worse because it had more pieces of this nightmare. LEGO produced about 20 Galador sets total, and many were cancelled mid-production because sales were so catastrophically bad. Sets were clearanced at 90% off, and still nobody wanted them. The TDN module spaceship that came with the line was just one massive factory-molded piece of plastic, weighing 770 grams, with almost no building involved. It's considered by many to be the worst LEGO part ever created. The whole Galador experience taught LEGO a hard lesson about straying too far from what made them great: building with bricks. After Galador flopped, LEGO didn't attempt another TV show tie-in for 9 years until Ninjago in 2011. The theme contributed directly to the company's near bankruptcy in 2003. Even actors from the show have confirmed that it was the poor sales of the LEGO sets that killed the entire franchise. Looking at these sets today, it's not hard to see why. First Order AT-ST 75201. Moving into Star Wars territory, we have what many consider the worst Star Wars set ever made. The First Order AT-ST from 2018 is genuinely insulting. This set costs £55 or $40 for 370 pieces. But here's the thing, you don't even get a complete AT-ST. The set is literally missing its head. LEGO decided to recreate a specific scene from The Last Jedi where BB-8 hijacks an AT-ST and the armored head gets torn off, leaving just the spindly legs and body. That scene lasts maybe 15 seconds in the movie. So instead of giving fans a complete, displayable AT-ST that could be used for multiple play scenarios, LEGO gave them half a vehicle that can only recreate one incredibly brief moment. What makes this even more frustrating is that just 1 year earlier in 2016, LEGO released set 75153, a complete Rogue One AT-ST with 449 pieces for only £45. So you're now paying £10 more for 79 fewer pieces, and you don't even get a head. The set also includes a useless hanger lift platform that doesn't even reach high enough to actually load minifigures onto the AT-ST. It literally fails at its one job. The AT-ST itself lacks articulation and has exposed Technic beams everywhere, making it look cheap and unfinished. The only redeeming quality is the minifigures. You get Captain Phasma, Finn and Rose in First Order disguises, and BB-8. But 3 decent minifigures don't justify this disaster of a build. Reviewers were absolutely brutal about this set. Brickset called it perhaps the worst of the over 600 Star Wars products released since 1999. One reviewer said LEGO probably created this set by taking a complete AT-ST and smashing it against a table until the head came off. The real kicker is that LEGO could have easily made this set work by including a removable head, turning it into a complete AT-ST with a cool play feature. Instead, they gave us this overpriced, incomplete, barely functional model that can't be used for anything except that one forgettable scene. The set has a rating of just 2.9 out of 5 stars on Brickset, with 260 ratings, and when you read the reviews, people are genuinely angry about this one. It represents everything that can go wrong when LEGO prioritizes movie accuracy over playability and value. Ben 10 Humungosaur, the Ben 10 theme from 2010, was LEGO's attempt to capture lightning in a bottle after the Galador disaster, but they somehow managed to repeat many of the same mistakes. The Humungosaur set, number 8517, contained just 14 pieces and is almost unanimously regarded as one of the most hollow, ugly, and shonky-looking sets ever produced. It's technically a construction set, which is an abbreviation for constructible action figures, but calling it a construction set is generous. Humungosaur is supposed to be this massive dinosaur-like alien that Ben transforms into, but what you get is this weird brown figure with lanky arms and legs that are way too long for his body. Every single back limb is completely hollowed out for some reason, making him look cheap and incomplete. His proportions are so wrong that almost any pose you put him in looks wonky and unnatural. The arms and legs are too thin to support the figure properly, and reviewers mentioned that there's zero versatility to him. You build him once, and that's it. There's nothing else you can do with those 14 pieces. He doesn't work as a display piece because he looks terrible. He doesn't work as a toy because he can't hold poses. The set features glow-in-the-dark eyes and an Omnitrix chest symbol, which are the only things anyone could find to compliment about it. One reviewer said the best thing about this set was that it came with unique brown pieces you couldn't get elsewhere. That's the best compliment they could manage. LEGO was clearly trying to replicate the limb-swapping concept from Galador with the Ben 10 line, using the same pin connection system. But it didn't work any better the second time. The whole Ben 10 theme only had 6 sets, and it was discontinued within the same year it was introduced. Sets went on clearance almost immediately. Just like Galador, the Ben 10 line showed that LEGO fans want to build things, not assemble pre-molded action figures. The hollow design and poor quality made Humungosaur a universally panned disaster. Jack Stone Theme Jack Stone was LEGO's attempt to create sets for younger builders aged 4 to 7, but the execution was terrible. The theme ran from 2001 to 2003 and produced 25 sets, most of which are considered awful. The biggest problem was the Jack Stone minifigures themselves. Unlike regular LEGO minifigures that can be taken apart and customized, Jack Stone figures were larger, pre-assembled, non-disassemblable single pieces. They had articulated legs and posable arms, but you couldn't take them apart or mix pieces with other minifigures. They look stiff and unnatural, with odd facial expressions and disproportionate features. The sets themselves were incredibly basic and overpriced. The police headquarters set, which was the largest in the line, cost $70 for just over 400 pieces. The police station was plain and unremarkable, with few interesting features or details. Many sets used massive specialized pieces instead of regular LEGO bricks, which meant less actual building and less versatility. The worst offender was probably the Super Glider set, which came packaged with Kabaya suites in Japan. This set had just 6 pieces total, a Jack Stone figure and a cheap-looking vinyl hang glider with about 5 different parts. That's it. People called it one of the worst LEGO sets ever made because it barely qualified as LEGO. There was essentially no building involved. Another terrible one was the Air Patrol jet, which, according to the story, Jack Stone used to capture a tornado by flying towards it and sucking it up with one of the jet's engines. The physics of that are obviously nonsense, but beyond that, the set itself was basic and overpriced, at $30 for 63 pieces. Jack Stone sets had an average rating that was considered bad compared to other LEGO categories. Only 16% of Jack Stone sets even scored high enough to be properly rated, and the majority of those that were rated were not recommended by reviewers. The theme failed because it removed what made LEGO special: the ability to build, customize, and create. Instead, kids got oversized action figures and sets that could only be built one way with minimal pieces. Scala Baby with Dalmatian. This one is genuinely creepy. The Scala theme was LEGO's attempt to appeal to girls with doll-like figures and playsets, and it ran through the late 90s and early 2000s. Most Scala sets were actually well made, with quality clothes and articulated dolls, but there's one set that absolutely everyone agrees is nightmare fuel. Set 3121 Summer Day Out featured a baby named Thomas in a pram with a Dalmatian dog. The problem is, the baby looks absolutely terrifying. Its face has this blank, soulless stare that makes it look less like a toy and more like something from a horror movie. The proportions are all wrong. The Dalmatian is so large that it dwarfs the baby, making the child look unnaturally small in the pram. People joke that the baby could ride the dog like a horse. The set also includes a picnic setup with an umbrella and a teddy bear, but nobody can focus on those because the baby is staring directly at you with those dead eyes. Reviewers described it as so creepy it is scary. One person said they genuinely didn't want to look at it because it felt like the baby was watching them. Another commented that this must be what Lego nightmares are made of. The weird thing is that Scala actually produced quality products overall. The dolls had excellent articulation, with joints at the shoulders, elbows, hips and knees. The clothing was well made and detailed, but they completely missed the mark with baby Thomas. The baby doll's face was poorly designed, with features that landed squarely in the uncanny valley. Scala sets are now seen as an interesting but failed experiment in Lego's history. The theme contributed to the company's financial troubles in the early 2000s because the sets used expensive, unique pieces and fabrics that cost more to produce than they could sell for. And sets like the creepy baby pram didn't help the line's reputation at all. Assault on Hoth 75098. This 2016 set caused massive controversy because Lego branded it as part of the Ultimate Collector series, the UCS label that's supposed to indicate highly detailed, accurate, premium sets for adult collectors. The Assault on Hoth retailed for about $250 and contained over 2,100 pieces. On paper, that sounds decent. The problem is what you actually got. The set is a playset, not a display model. It includes a rebel base with various rooms, gun turrets, and a trench. You get 14 minifigures, which is great, but the build quality is inconsistent and the design is simplistic. The base uses lots of basic bricks and doesn't have the intricate details you'd expect from a UCS set. It's fine as a playset for kids, but it doesn't belong in the Ultimate Collector series. UCS sets are supposed to be like the Millennium Falcon 75192 with over 7,500 pieces and incredible detail, or the Death Star 75159, or massive detailed Star Destroyers. They're display pieces with advanced building techniques. Assault on Hoth is just a scaled-up playset. Many fans felt Lego was using the UCS branding to justify charging a premium price for what was essentially a large but basic playset. The set has lots of inaccuracies compared to the movie. The proportions are off. The color scheme doesn't quite match. The trenches are too shallow. The whole thing feels more like a regular system set that got labeled UCS to bump up the price. When you compare it to other UCS sets released around the same time, it's clear this one doesn't belong in that category. Some people like it as a playable set with lots of minifigures, but as a UCS set, it's a major disappointment. It's not terrible if you ignore the UCS label, but the fact that Lego marketed it as an Ultimate Collector series set made people feel misled. For $250, collectors expected something spectacular, and what they got was decidedly ordinary. The set represents a case where Lego's marketing and branding choices hurt a product that might have been fine if it had been positioned differently. Original MTT 7662, the multi-troop transport from 2000, is another early Star Wars misstep. Set 7662 had 470 pieces, 7 battle droid minifigures, and cost £40. The piece count and minifigure count were respectable for the time, but the execution was terrible. The biggest problem was the color scheme. The MTT in the Phantom Menace is entirely brown. It's a dark brownish tan all over, but Lego's version was a chaotic mix of tan, grey, black, and weirdly enough, green pieces. Yes, there's green on this MTT. Nobody knows why. The result is eye-catching for all the wrong reasons. It looks like they just used whatever pieces they had available without caring about accuracy. The shape and design aren't terrible for a 2000 set. The basic form is recognizable as an MTT, but the color choices ruin it completely. It's such a jarring mix of random colors that it barely looks like the vehicle from the movie. Later versions of the MTT fixed the color issue, like set 75058 from 2014, which used proper dark tan and brown. But that original 2000 version is remembered as one of the ugliest Star Wars sets LEGO ever produced. It's a perfect example of how LEGO struggled in those early years to properly recreate Star Wars vehicles. They didn't have access to all the colors they needed, or they didn't prioritize accuracy, and the result was sets that looked sloppy and haphazard. The MTT set gets some leniency because it was from the early days of LEGO Star Wars, when the company was still figuring things out, but that doesn't change the fact that it looked bad then and looks even worse now in comparison to modern sets. Aragog in the Dark Forest, 47727. This Harry Potter set from 2002 is widely considered one of the worst in the entire Harry Potter theme. Set 4727 includes Harry Potter and Aragog, the giant spider from the Forbidden Forest, and the build is just sad. Aragog is incredibly blocky and lacks any real articulation. He's built from basic bricks and looks more like a weird tan blob with legs than an actual spider. The spider can barely move and doesn't look remotely scary or impressive. The forest setup is equally disappointing. There's a cobweb trap that makes no sense because it has no entrance or exit. How did the victim even get in there? The whole thing feels poorly thought out. One of the cheapest shortcuts LEGO took was using a stickered 1x1 tile showing 4 tiny spiders instead of including actual molded spider pieces. That's just lazy. They couldn't be bothered to include proper spider molds, so they printed some spiders on a sticker. Fang, Hagrid's dog, is also notably absent from the set even though he appears in this scene in the movie. The set only has 74 pieces total, so it's not like it's a massive build. It's small and underwhelming. While some of this can be explained by the set's age, there were plenty of great Harry Potter sets released in 2001 and 2002, so that's not really an excuse. The set is primitive, even by 2002 standards. It feels disjointed and incomplete. For fans of the Harry Potter series, Aragog is supposed to be this terrifying ancient spider, and LEGO gave us a blocky tan model that couldn't scare anyone. The set failed to capture the atmosphere or excitement of the scene from Chamber of Secrets. It's remembered as one of the most disappointing Harry Potter sets, and a low point for the early years of the theme. Technic C3PO 8007. The 2001 Technic C3PO looked weird from the start, and it turns out it plays exactly as weird as it looks. This was LEGO's attempt to create C3PO using Technic pieces. First, they decided to make him mostly black instead of gold, which is baffling. C3PO is literally famous for being a gold protocol droid. That's his defining visual characteristic. Why would you make him black? The gold-colored pieces are minimal and don't capture his iconic appearance at all. Beyond the color, the figure is unstable and poorly constructed. His knees don't bend at all, which limits posability significantly. Multiple reviewers mentioned that his limbs fall off easily and are incredibly difficult to put back on. So you've got a figure that can barely hold together, can't pose properly, and doesn't even look like C3PO. The set has 339 pieces, and at the time retailed for around $30, which wasn't terrible value piece-wise, but it didn't matter because what you built was disappointing. The proportions are wrong, he's too skinny and awkward-looking, and he just seems incomplete despite being a finished set. This was part of a wave of Technic Star Wars figures that included other characters, and while some of those were okay, C3PO was universally panned. People said he looked creepy rather than recognizable. When you're trying to create one of the most iconic characters from Star Wars, and the response is that he looks creepy, you failed. LEGO later created much better C3PO minifigures, and even a better Technic/buildable figure version, but this 2001 attempt is remembered as a walking disaster. It's definitely not the droid fans were looking for. Snap Jet Car 3571 in 1998, LEGO introduced the Snap system, which used flexible plastic pieces that could bend and snap together. The idea was to create a new building system alongside traditional LEGO bricks. The theme produced various sets, but set 3571 Jet Car is considered one of the worst LEGO sets ever made, period. With just 26 pieces, this thing barely qualifies as a vehicle. let alone a jet car. It looks like a rejected preschool art project. There's no recognizable car shape, the pieces don't form anything coherent, and the whole build is nonsensical. One reviewer said, making it out of ice cream sticks would result in something more car-like. That's brutal, but accurate. The set is extremely simple, with almost no playability. You can build the jet car or two alternate designs that are somehow even worse and make even less sense. The whole thing is just weird, bendy plastic pieces awkwardly connected together. According to Brick Economy, the set is worth around $10 now, but you can find it on Bricklink or Amazon for $3, and even at that price, one reviewer said they'd have more fun just burning the money. The Snap theme as a whole wasn't terrible. Some sets were interesting and the flexible pieces allowed for different building techniques. But the jet car exemplifies everything wrong with the line. It's ugly, confusing, barely buildable, and doesn't resemble what it's supposed to be. The set failed to find an audience, and Snap was discontinued after just a few years. LEGO realized that while experimentation is good, straying too far from their core brick building system alienated fans. Jack Stone Superglider 1435. We need to go back to Jack Stone for a moment because we haven't fully covered how bad some of these sets got. The Superglider, set 1435, was released as a Japan exclusive, packaged with Kabaya sweets. It contains just 6 pieces total and has been called the worst LEGO set ever produced by multiple sources. What do you get for your 6 pieces? A Jack Stone minifigure and a cheap vinyl hang glider with roughly 5 parts. That's it. There's no building involved whatsoever. You take the figure and attach it to the glider, and you're done. Calling this a LEGO set is generous. It's an action figure with a plastic accessory. The name Superglider is insulting because there's nothing super about it. It's the most basic glider imaginable, with rigid wings and zero functionality. You can't even launch it properly. This set represents everything wrong with the Jack Stone line. LEGO removed the building aspect entirely and created overpriced, under-delivering products. Even as a promotional item bundled with candy, this is pathetic. Kids would be disappointed to get this. It feels cheap, looks cheap, and offers no play value. The set proves that LEGO lost their way during the early 2000s when they were experimenting with themes like Jack Stone and Galador. They forgot that building with bricks was their core identity. A 6-piece set with a vinyl glider isn't LEGO. It's a cheap toy that happens to have the LEGO logo on it. Easter Bunny 10217. This 2003 seasonal set is genuinely unsettling. Set 10217 contains just 25 pieces and lets you build a yellow Easter Bunny wearing blue pants, a red shirt, and a red hat. Sounds innocent enough until you actually look at it. This bunny is nightmare fuel. Multiple reviewers have said it looks like something from a Monty Python movie, like the Killer Rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The proportions are creepy, the expression is weird, and the overall design lands squarely in the uncanny valley. It's supposed to be a cute Easter decoration, but instead it looks like it wants to murder you in your sleep. Some people probably think the bunny is perfectly lovely, but the vast majority of reactions are strongly negative. One reviewer said, "It's right up there on their, nope, I don't need to see this list, next to clowns." That comparison says everything. This bunny has the same energy as an evil clown. The yellow color doesn't help. It's not a warm, friendly yellow. It's a harsh, bright yellow that makes the bunny look artificial and wrong. Combined with the red and blue clothing, the color scheme is garish and off-putting. As a seasonal set, this was probably meant to be a fun Easter display piece or a gift for kids, but who wants this staring at them from their shelf? It's the kind of set that parents would quietly donate because their kids found it too creepy. LEGO has released many successful seasonal sets over the years, but the Easter Bunny 10217 is remembered as one of the biggest misses. Sometimes simple designs can be charming, but in this case, simple just meant creepy. Burj Khalifa 21008. The LEGO Architecture series usually produces impressive microscale models of famous landmarks, but the Burj Khalifa set from 2011 missed the mark. The Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the world, an incredible feat of engineering, with a sleek, complex design. LEGO's version, with 333 pieces, looks like a stick. It's basically just a thin tower built from tan and white pieces that does nothing to capture the majesty or intricacy of the actual building. The problem is that at the architecture series' small scale, it's difficult to include the details that make the Burj Khalifa impressive. What you end up with is a simplified tower that could be almost any tall building. The tapered design is there, but the setbacks and architectural features are minimized to the point where they barely register. For a landmark that's famous specifically for its height and design, the set feels underwhelming. At a retail price of around $30, the value isn't terrible for 333 pieces, but what you're building isn't exciting. It doesn't make for an interesting build experience because you're essentially just stacking bricks higher and higher. And once it's done, it doesn't look impressive on display because it's just a tan stick. Other architecture sets like the Sydney Opera House or the Taj Mahal manage to capture the essence of their subjects in microscale, but the Burj Khalifa set failed to convey what makes the actual building special. It's not offensively bad, but it's disappointing and forgettable, which might be worse. Life of George theme Lego. Life of George, launched in 2011 as Lego's first attempt at augmented reality gaming. The concept was that you'd build small models from the included bricks, then use a smartphone app to scan your creations. The app would judge your build against a reference and score you on accuracy and speed. There were 12 levels in the game that could be played in novice or expert mode. On paper, this sounds innovative. Lego combining physical building with digital gaming could have been cool. But in practice, it was clunky and frustrating. The app didn't work reliably, often failing to recognize builds or giving inconsistent scores. The physical sets themselves were underwhelming, basically just collections of random bricks. There was no themed building or storytelling involved. You were just trying to replicate geometric shapes and patterns. The gameplay loop got repetitive quickly. Build something, scan it, get a score, move to the next challenge. There was no progression, no story, no reward beyond numerical scores. Parents and kids quickly lost interest. The theme lasted only 1 year before being discontinued. People either preferred purely physical Lego building or purely digital games. The hybrid concept didn't work because it delivered neither experience well. The physical building was too limited, and the digital gameplay was too basic. Life of George is a footnote in Lego history, an early experiment in augmented reality that failed to find an audience. Lego learned that not all innovation works, and sometimes it's better to stick with what they do best. Aqua Raiders theme. The Aqua Raiders theme launched in 2007 and was discontinued within the same year due to poor sales. Only 7 sets were ever released. The theme centered around a team exploring underwater ruins and treasure while facing dangers from sea creatures like sharks and lobsters. Sounds fine on paper, but the execution was bland. The storyline had no substance or depth, just generic underwater adventure stuff. The sets themselves were uninspired. You got submarines, divers, and sea creatures, but nothing about them stood out. The builds were basic, and the color schemes were dull. The minifigures were generic divers with nothing distinctive about them. There were no memorable characters or vehicles. Compare this to Lego Atlantis, another underwater theme that launched in 2010 and lasted 2 years. Atlantis had a more developed story about discovering the lost city of Atlantis, fighting portal guardians, and collecting treasure keys. The sets were more colorful and detailed, and the theme had a clear mythology behind it. Aqua Raiders felt like Lego threw together an underwater theme without putting in the effort to make it special. Kids weren't interested and the theme bombed. It's remembered as one of Lego's quickest failures, cancelled before it even had a chance to build momentum. The lesson here is that even if your core concept is solid, you need interesting designs, good storytelling, and memorable characters to make a theme succeed. Aqua Raiders had none of those things. Naboo Starfighter, with Vulture Droid 7877 Dis 2011 set, is interesting because the Naboo Starfighter itself is actually good. The problem is the value proposition. Set 7,877 cost £55 and included 442 pieces, which gives you a decent Naboo Starfighter and 9 minifigures including destroyer droids. On the surface, that's not terrible, but when you look closer, the set falls apart. The minifigures are mostly battle droids and destroyer droids, which aren't particularly exciting or valuable. The Naboo Starfighter is well designed, but it's not a new design. It's another version of a ship Lego had done before. and the Vulture droid is small and underwhelming. For £55, you'd expect either a larger, more impressive build or more exclusive, desirable minifigures. What you got was a decent but not exceptional starfighter and a bunch of generic droids. The set didn't offer good value compared to other Star Wars sets at the same price point. It felt like LEGO was charging a premium for a set that should have been cheaper. Fans weren't impressed and the set was quickly forgotten. It's not the worst set ever made, but it represents the frustrating trend of LEGO overpricing Star Wars sets while under-delivering on content. When you're competing with other sets in the same price range that offer more interesting builds or better minifigures, being merely okay isn't enough. Freemaker Adventures Arrowhead 75186, released in 2016, this set was based on the LEGO Star Wars animated show The Freemaker Adventures. The Arrowhead ship is a LEGO original design not from the movies, which immediately limits its appeal. The set costs £55 for 775 pieces and includes 4 minifigures. The ship design is polarizing. Some people like the trans blue accents and the overall shape, but many feel it doesn't fit the Star Wars aesthetic. The biggest problem is the gaps in the back of the ship, where the side plates don't even cover the sides fully.